I'd like to welcome everyone to the May 14th meeting of the Gainesville End of Life Doulas. We are the local Gainesville group of the Florida End of Life Doula Alliance. And today we have a special guest. It's Christina Larson, who has written a book about her journey with her mother called Rosemary Now and Then. So Christina holds a master's degree in psychology, a BA in religious studies, and an associate's degree in paramedics. Over the years, she has served as a crisis counselor, her county's first female paramedic, a foster mom for 145 children.
Not all at once.
I know, it couldn't be. And a steward of award-winning Shoal Sanctuary Nature Preserve, offering ecotourism and forest immersion therapy. Her recent book, Rosemary Now and Then, was just published earlier this year. We're in 2025. And it tells the story of her journey with her mother, Rosemary. This book has already received a National Literary Titan Award and International Firebird Honor. So excited to listen as Christina shares with us a glimpse of Rosemary's end-of-life journey, living with dementia. And then we will have time for questions and answers at the end. So please take notes so you'll remember what you want to ask. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Shanti. It's an honor to be here, everyone. Where medical care attempts to revive and hospice waves goodbye, end-of-life doulas answer a calling to nurture during the final phase of life. And I do think it's a calling. My book is not only about quality living with dementia, it's also about end-of-life surprises and near-death intrigue based on, afterlife intrigue based on near-death experiences. There's a paradigm shift that I am getting privy to that's happening in our lifetime with the increase in medical capacity for revival from near death. There is an increase in near-death experiences and subsequent increase in scientific research on the topic. University of Virginia, Duke University, the Near-Death Experience Research Foundation, Harvard studies, Oxford's doing interdisciplinary approaches. All these research avenues are forming a redefinition of how we perceive death. It's really exciting for me. When I was a kid, I thought dualistically, you're either dead or alive. My goldfish is alive, my goldfish is dead, flush. Well, then as a paramedic, I was taught that there's this gray area between life and death, that clinical death and biological death started out, it was 4 to 6 minutes. Then they upped it to 10 minutes based on circumstances, but with increasing likelihood of brain damage. Then it was the golden hour, dependent on circumstances. And then hours with hypothermia. So that gray area keeps expanding. With my 24/7 care of my mom, I discovered there's a permeable membrane, the way I perceive it, between life and death. And people with dementia can gravitate back and forth. And this went on for years. So I started to question my own definition of death. Answers came during the pandemic with my own near-death experience regarding the purpose of life and the transitional nature of death. So familiar we are with the miseries of dementia and dying, which are physical, we tend to overlook the amazing phenomena of these transformative experiences. The book not only, it reduces that cringe by enhancing curiosity. That's my goal. But trigger a warning, I wanted to mention that it does not gloss over the hard issues. It is pretty raw. But what I do is I couple that with highlights over the humor, the joy, and the wonders of dementia and dying, with an intimate look at my mother, Rosemary's final years. I'm going to read you only two excerpts to save time because I want to hear your questions. But this one is from stroke number 5. There were quite a few. And this is a dementia mind excursion. Enjoy the ride. Oh, day and night, but this is wondrous strange. Our death doula Deborah predicted days like this. Sunrise jimmies open an otherworldly window. Rosemary hovers between dream and wakefulness, time and space, present and post-life. The ethereal fog fascinates her to no end. She literally takes leave of her senses on a marvelous cerebral adventure. This can't be real, this in-betweenness. I'm going to have to lie down and go back in the blanket cocoon to be reborn. This is a curious world. We're every age at once. I'm 20 right now. The age of discovery. I'm here, but semi-detached. It's funny, this semi-being coming to this material life. Were my mother's intriguing comments wishful thinking, delusions, brain chemistry, or actual accounts witnessed on the brink? Everyone has to decide for themselves. As for me, my near-death experience connected those dots. I'm going to give you just a little taste of what that was like. After my first and only vaccine for the pandemic, I stopped breathing. I struggled. I ran outside thinking that taking off the mask, fresh air would help. It did not. I saw the horrified look on my husband's face and tried to comfort him by mouthing the words, I love you, because when you can't breathe, you can't speak. He asked, does that mean you're dying? As I turned blue. And the paramedic in me kicked in and I nodded yes. At that moment, I realized that there's nothing I can do about this. And then I relaxed into it, and I promise you, dying was no different than falling to sleep. The body suffered, yes, there were all sorts of things going on, but that was just the physical misery. The spiritual realm beyond is infinitely loving, beautiful, and familiar. And that's something we don't hear about nearly enough. The infinite bliss reminded me of when I was a child and my parents would take us to the Wildwood, New Jersey boardwalk, where there was a mirror maze. And in the middle of the mirror maze, there were 2 big mirrors on either side. And if you could see around your own reflection, it went off to infinity. It was sort of like that, but it was infinite joy and wonder. And it went in every direction. And there was no reflection blocking my view. That's the closest I can get to putting words on this experience. Then there was the loving tranquility that reminds me of a song I learned when I was little. I'm going to sing. I've got that peace that passeth understanding down in my heart. That is a New Testament quote from Paul, who I now suspect had his own near-death experience. The familiar part, this is the part that I'm really excited about sharing. Turns out, with hindsight, since the near-death experience, I realized that I had out-of-body experiences all my life, and I didn't know that they were anything odd. I still am not sure that they are, because I think we all have them. We just don't realize it. And I normalized it. We don't have words for it, so it wasn't talked about. The first one, the earliest one I can remember, and I'm only going to give you one, was when I was an infant. I was born with an umbilical hernia, which was repaired by none other than C. Everett Koop, who was a new pediatrician at the time. My mother said jokingly, if she had known he would reach such notoriety as the Surgeon General, she would have had him autograph his work. But what happened was the hernia repair infected, and I was taken back to Philadelphia Children's Hospital. I clearly recall his voice saying, lay her down. And a nurse and my mother held me down while the surgeon took a scalpel to my abdomen. I don't know if there was anesthesia involved or not. What I do know is, mostly from my mother's accounts, her rendition was that the putrid smell made the nurse faint. That part of her story always struck me odd. And with the near-death experience that I had recently, now I understand why. What I recall after lay her down was screaming, which I'm sure was mine, uh, overhead, tops of heads, and this loving female presence, which was not my mom. Now I'm thinking that maybe it was that nurse's empathy for the screaming infant that made her faint, and that she was the presence who was comforting me. So I don't remember the pain. I just remember that part of it. Let's see. Other out-of-body experiences I'm not going to go into, but they're not only about trauma. I had flashes of this infinite joy with aha revelations. Throughout life, glimpses of what lies beyond often pass unappreciated. Hints come in such forms as dreams. I do believe that sleep is our dress rehearsal for dying. Dissociative escape, like the umbilical hernia repair. Intense concentration. There was a time in high school when I was learning a new mathematical equation and couldn't figure it out. It was really hard and I loved math. But when it clicked, I was 2 towns away, hovering over the Dairy Queen, and I could see the roof and it had all these ugly wires I was not aware of. Now, I probably would have forgotten that one, except that every time I did that math, that specific type of math, I remembered that view of the Dairy Queen. Bizarre. Also, and this one I really want to get into a little because you can all relate to this, I promise. Confusion. The word confusion, confusion. When something strikes us that is comprehensively incoherent, I think what we try to do is figure it out based on our experience, not only our life experience, but our previous experience. So, but it's not meant to be. For some reason, we are isolated during life from those memories. And that's the confusion. We're trying to fuse what we knew and know with what's happening now. It can't be done. This shift in awareness requires adjusting, especially time and language. So those are the only 2 things I'm going to get into a little. Time is a necessary illusion during life, not so on the other side. That's why people with dementia and near-deathers often have difficulty associating with clocks and calendars. I know for about a year after mine, I had a great deal of time. I could remember that my great-grandson had visited, but I didn't know if it was yesterday, a week ago, or a year ago. Could not comprehend that, which disappointed him. Sad. Language. Bonnie probably remembers this. I could not speak well for over a year. I had never had a stammer before, but I sure did afterward. And it was like my brain was going, trying to think of a word or what to say or how to respond. And there was this confusion with synaptic junctions trying to click that just wasn't happening. And the same happened during conversation. People would talk to me and they would either talk too fast for me to comprehend or more than one person talking. And unless things were said very slowly to give my brain time to, it was as if I was interpreting from another language. There was this, it wasn't frustrating so much as it was exhausting. It took a tremendous amount of concentration and energy, but my brain would be going, and my words would be going, and then all of a sudden, it's like everything stopped and all was well. And I could still see that someone was talking to me. I could still follow their facial expressions and try to respond accordingly. But all I was hearing was white noise. Couldn't understand anything. And that went on for quite a while. It was pretty alarming for people who knew me and were close to me. But that all is well, that became my near-death experience motto. No matter what's happening in life, no matter how confused we get, all is well. And when I say it, I actually get goosebumps remembering the sensation of that. It was really delightful. For this group, I want to talk about medical system flaws, not only as a paramedic, but my experience with my mom. The practice of medicine. The reason they call it a practice is because we are all guinea pigs. It is an imperfect system, and we're always learning more ways to help people, revive people. One of my doctors mentioned that he referred to my transient global amnesia as a blessing. I was diagnosed with transient global amnesia, an autoimmune reaction to the messenger RNA and the vaccine, subsequent meningitis, spinal taps, hospitals, you name it. It was a mess. But I really wasn't suffering the way they thought. And that's why when he said the amnesia was a blessing, I thought that's not right, because doctors are trained to focus on the physical, void of the spiritual, what's going on. And I'm not talking about any particular religion. I'm talking about the beyond, regardless of what religious path we follow. And I try to keep it that way so that a larger audience can relate to this material. So the understaffing of nursing and rehab facilities, that's by law. I hunted down, I researched that and found that Florida statute specifies a ratio of caregivers to patients, and it would be fine. I looked at those ratios, and if all was well and nothing went wrong and the building was intact and all the patients were healthy, it would be a fine ratio. Unfortunately, health is not going to happen, good health, and with an elderly population and old buildings, chaos reigns. And it's not that the people are so much indifferent as exhausted, and there aren't enough of them to go around. Consequently, my mother suffered severe neglect and sexual abuse. Like everyone, capable hospice staff can sometimes prove inept as well. When there's a subplot to the book with my brother, he died very quickly of brain cancer, very unexpectedly. And I also cared for him. When he started vomiting blood, they told me to use a brown towel rather than address the fact that the medication that was being given orally was causing his GI distress, not the cancer. Also, the roof of his mouth collapsed and obstructed his airway. They had no idea what that meant. They thought it must be related to the cancer, but I had seen it before as a paramedic. What it is that with mouth breathers, prolonged period of breathing through your mouth, you know how your mouth gets dry at night? Well, eventually the mucous membrane collapses and the mouth peels like sunburn. And I had experienced deep breathing, so I was able to help him not suffocate to death, at least that. My mother was suffering greatly, and they attributed it to agitation and treated it as agitation. Now, a spoiler alert, if you're planning to read this book and don't want to know one of the surprises in the end, cover your ears and I'll tell you when to take them off. The agitation that they were treating her for turned out to be cancer, and it was not diagnosed until 2 months after she died. That's when the results finally came in. Okay, so also U.S. elder care is substandard based on the top 10 wealthiest nations in the world. It's really seriously substandard. And that's because we live in a capitalism. And a lot of the legislation and changes in laws have to do with litigation and cases attorneys take. Attorney incentive is based on future earnings. Seniors do not have future earnings. So that is a big contributing factor to why attorneys are not willing to take cases of neglect and abuse of elders. Okay, now our end-of-life doula helped fill the void with two things: objective perspective and intimate care. She was like a barometer for us of acceptable care levels and realistic expectations. Does a call to 911 jeopardize hospice eligibility? No, it does not. It just stops hospice until the patient is released again and the doctor can simply reorder hospice. It's we were given the impression from hospice that if we called 911, my mother would no longer be available for that service, and that's not the case. There were people in hospice administration who said never call 911, and there were PM hospice workers who didn't want to be bothered coming out, who told us just call 911 and they'll handle it. Yeah, it was that bad. Okay, so let's see. When does hospice cross the line between palliative care and neglect? That was something our end-of-life doula was able to help clarify for us, and I'm going to read you another excerpt from the book. This is a mistreatment in the name of palliative care. Severe pain plagues Rosemary. We take turns massaging her back, but nothing helps. Due to the location over her kidneys, I suspect it might be pyelonephritis, kidney inflammation. Nurses speculate on costochondritis, that's joint pain, ribs, medication reactions, gas, or agitation. Rosemary's moans intensify. Our death doula, Deborah, gives the situation perspective. It doesn't matter if she stubbed her toe. Do not allow her to suffer. She also provided us with system know-how. Even as a paramedic, I did not know a lot of the things like adaptation to declining ADLs and risk factors. What near do not resuscitate means and how that's interpreted if you dial 911. The answer is that if they have a pulse, they will resuscitate. That's pretty much the way it is. A DNR, you don't call until after their heart has stopped. And that's important to know. And it's also important to have family there to verify that she's DNR and they don't want to buck it. So that's a big issue. Police department, whenever she wandered off, the silver alerts, helpful. And the most helpful of all was the fire department, manpower assist. So many times my husband and I tried to lift my mom, who was as light as a feather, but with dead weight, we injured her trying to help her. And manpower assist, they had plenty of strong, able-bodied guys who would come along and just whiff her up off the floor and put her back to bed yet again and again. Doulas offer intimate care. Our doula bought my mom a gift. They were just little candles that flicker, 2 little candles, and we still use those. Let's see, she died in 2018. We still use those every time we have a fancy meal and have a toast to my mom. That was lovely. She encouraged us to arrange sitters and form a neighborhood calling tree for care of us, and so that we could get some sleep once in a while, and also to protect my mom from the sexual predator when she was in the facilities. Ceremonies were really, really important. I had never heard of a living wake. Do you all know what that is? I did not know this. It was wonderful. We welcomed visitors pre-death when she was still alert and could still have a conversation. And that was very, very valuable, not only to us, the survivors, but to my mom. The final vigil, she came and sat with us as my mother died. She knew about post-mortem care, and she joined us in a post-mortem toast to my mom, which was lovely. From our first breath to our final exhale, our bodies persevere. Eventually, wear and tear coaxes us more willingly to the grave. But that ashes to ashes, dust to dust Disintegration only applies to the body and our flaws. The part that is infinite is our loving essence, our out of body consciousness that some call the image of God within. Until then, may we embrace every opportunity, confront challenges together, and toast every milestone. Please raise your virtual glasses with me. Here's to Rosemary, to terminal enlightenment, and to end of life doulas who help guide our path. Clink, gulp. Let us approach death not with a cringe, but with fascination. And now, questions. Oh, unmute. Everybody unmute together and we can chat. Sure.
Wow, that's so great how you tied together all the different experiences and relating it to the sort of out of body.
Bizarre. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, well, anybody have any comments or anything you want to ask or share? I can look at my notes.
People are shy.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess we are. But I like the part where you said that it's sort of like, I think in a spiritual sense, whether it's a dying and coming back or finding just a taste of eternity or emptiness or whatever you want to call it, that feeling that all is well.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not in a war zone and someone's not killing my child in front of me.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Like there's some, there's intensity that I have not, I wouldn't be able to apply that probably. I don't know, but it's a sense of peace that I'm starting to experience more and more as I move on in time. And I like that. My own experience with my mom was she was just in this sort of sweet, ethereal place, and I just got to go and witness it with her and be with her through it. Um, and I really enjoyed the parts in your book where she was being funny because, for example, in the I guess it was an emergency room or something where the doctor, like she said, "Am I in the morgue?" And the doctor said, "No, you're in the hospital." He was what, straight faced, and she goes, "Well, I guess that's good news. I'm still here," or something.
It's not all
Um,
bad. Could be
Not all
worse.
bad. Yeah, and I think that that's the part that I like about not taking life too seriously and not taking death too seriously. Um,
I I heard, this was hearsay, but it was through Native American. Um, there was a story of uh, it was two warring fractions of indigenous cultures, and one was monsterizing the other, and to ultimately belittle the chief, killed his only son in front of him. The boy was maybe 10 years old. And at the time, as his son was, and there was nothing they could do, they had all the power. And the son looked at his father and they looked into each other's eyes and realized that they would see each other later, but not now. And just the intense look into each other's eyes was enough for them to part. All is well. And then the boy was killed.
mhm.
But that level of intensity during real tragedy reminds me of, remember that Amish school shooting where the Amish people went over and comforted the wife of the guy who was slaying their children? It reminded me of that level of depth and spiritual integrity. It just blows me away.
I I have a question, Chris, more of a kind of a, I guess, to come back to sort of a procedural kind of because that's what I'm thinking. I want to make sure that I take advantage of resources. I'll put it like that, as I make my plans. At what point did you, now I have, since I know you, I know your mom lived independently in her own home around the corner from yours. And at some point she was in the care system, and then you moved her into your home with you and Robert, your husband. So at what point did you go, okay, now we need this and this and this and this, and oh, a death doula, which still, just having lived in the community over there, I'm congratulating you for finding those resources. How did you know to do that? And at what point did you say, this is what I want to do in hospice? I mean, what went through your mind as you started lining up? I know you're well organized and you think ahead, and that's to your benefit. But how did you plan that out?
There was no planning. We did add the room onto our house so that we have room if she agreed to come live with us. But we stumbled along, and it was a gradual process. She was burning meals, and her home health, home health care provider was saying, this isn't safe. You must forbid your mother from cooking. And that was horrifying to me. My mother fed the world. And how can I tell my mother, the chef, not to cook? So what we started doing was taking the, what are these called? Knobs
Knobs.
off of the stove. And she would have to call me to come put the knobs on so she could cook, that sort of thing. But often we got alarming, smoke coming out of the house from the neighbors, and we'd have to run around the corner, sprint over there, and she'd be snoring away. She'd have she had a huge collection of timers, and her burnt meal was smoldering or smoking, and she was laying right beside the timer, which was blazing in her ear, and she slept right through it. But we started renting a room at her house. She had extra rooms, to active duty military, because we're right near a base, and they helped us supervise her. That was helpful. So the way she moved in with us, we kept inviting her, and she kept declining. I don't want to be a burden and all that. That was her mantra. But one of the strokes proved so devastating that she had no choice but to move in with us. And that made the decision for all of us. Yeah, I think that answers. It was more, but
Well, I asked specifically about how you
the
knew
doula,
what
that was the other
the
part.
doula.
Yes. Stumbled upon her. She was someone we had known previously, and she became a doula while my mother was going through the early stages. And then she helped with some other deaths of other friends and family of her own. And then she introduced us to the whole field. We had never heard of it before. We knew of
Yeah.
birthing doulas, but we never heard anything about deathing doulas. Yeah. So
Yeah, that's where most people are. When I bring
right.
up the word, they're well aware of that milestone in our lives and the assistance of a doula and what the role is. But you have to explain the other transition.
It's
Thank
just
you.
the other end of life. It's
Yeah.
a midwife for dying. Yeah,
Yeah, ushering in, ushering out. Yes.
exactly.
Lee, I see you're unmuted. Did you have anything you wanted to say?
No, not right now. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else who hasn't put input yet? Anne or Anna?
Thank you for that presentation. It made me think about the numbers, the millions. I mean, we're looking at some staggering numbers, and we need a lot of help, So all of us that can learn about this and can share and pass the word along, we can do what we can in our community, but because there's such a need.
Mhm.
Such a need. And one thing, when you were talking about the near-death experience and finding that, all was well. It reminded me of Ram Dass. I was listening to a talk he gave. He's an old teacher here, and then he said he was having a conversation with a teacher, and he said, "What should I tell the folks that I work with that are dying? What do you have a message that I can relate to them?" And he said, "Tell them that it's perfectly safe. They can relax into it, and they can just have an experience of peace at that time." And I just love that description. It is safe, and we can, but it takes a minute of practice now for us, for us to prepare. In other words, that if we know where we want to be at that point, we start now. We start now preparing so that when we get to that point, we're not freaking out. We can find that moment of practice, of safe and of stillness, and know that all is well. So thank you.
That was lovely. Thank you, Anna. When I was a paramedic, and a drunk driver broke my neck, and I was no longer able to do that. And afterward, part of my, what do they call it? Occupational therapy or whatever, they gave me an aptitude test, and they said I should be a mortician. Well, now I realize that no, I don't like all that formality and all that stilted, it doesn't make any sense to me the way they handle corpses. But I could easily have been a end-of-life doula. That makes sense to me. And I love the way our doula tailored my mom's care and our family's care to our beliefs and our inclinations.
Yeah, and I can share a little bit about what it was like for me, transitioning my mom from her independent living to having to take care of her. I was working nights actually I had 2 part-time jobs in hospitals, and so I would get calls from her that she couldn't get the TV to work, and she would call Cox Cable, and she would do that. She would call Cox Cable, and she'd keep them on the phone, and they were very nice. They'd talk to her for 20, 25, 30 minutes, just trying to walk her through stuff. And then I would come to her house, and she would be using the remote to try to call a family member, and she would say, "I just can't get through to her," and I'd be like, "Oh, yeah, I see." And then things like putting kitty litter in the cat food bowl, and the dangers. And I must confess that I allowed her to drive longer than I should have, because I just didn't know how to change that or intervene or take the keys. Finally, at a neurologist appointment that I went to with her, he saw some really severe, she was really catching into the Alzheimer's, and he said, "Are you still driving?" And I looked like, "Yeah." And he said, "Well, no more. As of today, that's it." And I was like, hallelujah. So I said, "It's okay, because we'll do stuff together. We'll have more time together. We'll go to the store and, just try to make it okay." And then I found that I needed someone to be with her all the time. And at that point, it wasn't me. So I found a live-in who lasted maybe a month or 2, but it was a disaster. She crossed all kinds of boundaries and did many things that were unacceptable. So I had to take her to Starbucks one day and tell her she wasn't coming back. Just sit there while she packed her bag. And so that was the day that I moved in with Mom. And glad I could, and that I did. And I think our culture that is so ignorant of the needs of our elders, I call it ignorant because we know better, but I think, but people just toss people aside, and that's just a tragedy in our society. That it's an honor and a joy and a privilege to be able to walk our mothers through their final days and
We get to know
assist
our
other.
moms when they were little kids.
Yeah, the reverse, growing is the baby thing and ungrowing is the elder thing. And so anyway, it's just delightful to have this conversation. Anybody else?
I can give you another quick reading. This was after 3 near-death experiences, my mom's and mine and my brother's. But I think it was Anna said something that made me think this might be useful. Neither a unified field theory nor God can be pinned down with human language as if a noun, an object, or an entity. It's life's conundrum. The biggest questions remain unanswerable while busy with the commotion of living. Regardless what religious path we follow, personalized, quality, afterlife allegories serve a valuable purpose. My brother's golden ladder, my E=mc² twist, and my mother's family reunion ever after ease the way when death ushers us onward.
Mm. Beautifully said. Yeah.
It was, what was it Anna told us about somebody, what was the quote you gave us?
I think
Ramdas.
that death is safe.
Safe, that was it. And
That's
that's what
the
this
word he
reminded me
used.
of.
Yes,
Yeah.
very
If you
safe.
have in your mind a visual, I'm a very visual person, but if you have a safe visual, it's so much more comforting and reassuring to talk about the golden ladder or the energy or the family reunion than to just go nebulously into the beyond.
Yeah, I was at a death cafe the other day where there was a guy who was a long career of paramedicine and emergency care. And he said that he found someone who was really dying. I mean, almost like, I guess, dead or just right there at the edge in the situation. And he held their hand and he let them know that it was okay. And he saw a complete change in their face, in their countenance. And I think as doulas, that's the joy. Anything that we can do to ease the emotional angst or the unfinished bad things that have happened. I mean, we've all had things that have happened or that we've done, and to just kind of absolve that and help it to be in the past, and to have, even at that last moment, to recognize your goodness, and is just beautiful. Really important.
People ask me about negative near-death experiences and the horrors of belief in hell and that sort of thing. And it reminds me of when I was dying and I was struggling to breathe. That was hell. And it wasn't until I relaxed and accepted it. I think the same goes for nightmares. If we're trying to understand something in life and it's confusing or frustrating or upsetting, and we're fighting against it, that's what causes nightmares. And the same thing goes for deathmares.
Wow. Well, Bonnie, go ahead.
Well, I just, before we leave each other, and since I've read the book and was able to, I had to do it in pieces. I have to admit that, I had to pick it up and put it down and pick it up. And it wasn't like, let's, can't wait for the next. It was like, whew, time out. Just having the little bit of oversight of care when my mother was with me. I respect everything that you were writing about. It was just tough to live it again. And I used the moments where your mom's sense of humor and your brilliance on, here, let's do dinner this way, and, honoring the things that were meaningful to her. And I wanted everybody to know that the last part of the book is all resources, all the research that Chris did, an enormous amount of wonderful, wonderful resources. So even if you choose not to make it through every chapter, which are stroke 1, stroke 2, stroke 3.
I numbered the chapters by strokes.
Yes.
Wow.
The last part that has all this, research of the medical, the psychological, the spiritual, is just an enormous resource, and I highly recommend it, even just for that last part. And I commend you, Chris, for all the work that you put into this. 8 years in the making is this book.
2 years to write, 6 years to edit. And
Yeah.
those last chapters that Bonnie's referring to actually were written after my near-death experience. So
Mhm.
that it took everything I experienced with the care of my mother and pulled it all together. And then I was able to weave it in a way that made sense.
Yeah. Afterlife speculations as far as the eye can see and then some. Beautiful, beautiful.
Yeah, I also included a post-mortem chapter because nobody really writes about what do you do with the corpse, the dead corpse of a loved one in your home, and what to expect and what really happens. So I wrote about that, and it is touching and humorous in really warped ways. It's like there are so many things that happened that were so funny, meaningful coincidences, that just when it's really getting drudgerous and agonizing, all of a sudden something would snap us right out of it.
Mhm. Well, thank
I
you so
haven't said
much.
anything, but I just
Oh,
want to say thank you for the various insights. And, I'm not facing anything currently, but who knows, it might be me next.
Anne, are
never
you a
know.
doula?
Hmm? No, I'm an interested party
Oh, good.
who
Okay.
has had Alzheimer's in the family.
Uh-huh.
So
Oh, I hope you've gotten a lot out of the talk.
thank
And
you.
oh,
It's
I
always
wanted to
helpful.
mention, if you do read the book, by all means, please post a review on Amazon. You just
Of
get on the
course.
Amazon page and you scroll all the way to the bottom, and that's where you post reviews. You don't have to have even purchased it through Amazon. You just have to be someone who purchases on Amazon in order to have an account where you can
Great.
post a review. Reviews matter for some reason or other. I can write a book. I don't know how to market a book, but my publisher tells me that you have to reach 100 reviews before the bookstores will take it seriously.
Mhm.
All my reviews are 5-star. I'm getting wonderful feedback, but just not enough reviews. I think I'm in the 30s right now.
Oh, good to know. Yeah, thank you for asking for that. I often like to end a circle of sharing with just some highlight. If you would like to share anything, um, uh, we can close our circle. And I just want to say that it took me really inside your reading the parts of the book I read and hearing you speak really took me inside your journey. And it's so different than looking at something to feel part of it and connect with it. And that's my pleasure from today. If anyone else would like to have any closing remarks. Okay.
I just wanted to tell Chris, these recordings are available. So if you're, Debbie is her name, is the death doula you worked with.
Oh yeah, I can
Deborah,
let her know. Okay.
let her know she'll be able to see it
Great.
afterwards.
Yes. And so what I'd like to while we have the recording on, let people know Gainesville EOL Doulas is our YouTube channel. And all of these monthly recordings we put there. And this will go up very soon. I usually do it pretty quickly. And so this meeting meets every second Wednesday from 3 to 4 on Zoom for anyone who's interested, and we have different topics. And the Florida group has their monthly Zoom meeting on the first Thursday at 6 usually. And to attend those, you have to go to the feolda.org, FEOLDA.org website to sign up for the Zooms. It's just been a great pleasure to have you all here today.
I'll make another comment that this is insurmountable odds and that all is well thing I was talking about. I read to you. I recited to you from memory because I have dyslexia So I'm an author with dyslexia. And that's why it took me so long to edit the book, because everything's inverted and words on the page are like a sea of letters. It's really fun. But I wanted to mention that so that people who have obstacles know that there are ways of persevering and overcoming obstacles if you have enough blooming determination.
Well, that shows that you're truly passionate about this work that you do. Thank you so much, Chris. And thanks to everyone for joining us today.
Thank you.